Hello, good evening. A very warm welcome to all of you joining us on this very special evening for a conversation with the composer and oud player, our friend Attab Haddad. I'm grateful to have him on board today to share some of his interesting and fascinating journey all the way here in London. And we really know that these circumstances, in the light of what has been happening in Beirut, it has been hit to the system. And definitely we stand with all of our friends in Beirut. And we do respect that some of these people will not be able to join on this evening. However, we decided between me and Atab to go ahead with the event, and we really wanted to welcome everyone for this conversation this evening. Atab is an old friend, and he is one of the very unique oud and composers who work in the diaspora today. Attab is been with Arts Canteen for few years now, working close together. The producer, sorry, I'm just gonna take a minute. The producer said there is an echo here, so I'm just trying to switch off the one of the other platforms. Um, bear with me a minute. Is that better? No. Attab, can you hear me?
I can hear you fine, yeah.
That's great. Thank you so much. I'm really sorry. I didn't realize there was an echo in the sound. So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome again to the second episode of Arts Canteen In Conversation. As I said earlier, we really feel the pain for the victims and the catastrophe in Beirut. Attab and me has been friends for a while, and I just thought it would be nice for him to come for this very interesting conversation. These conversations are usually designed to bring some artists and gallerists, curators, architects, and filmmakers, and musicians, critics who live in the diaspora today and beyond. And we thought in this second edition, we'd like to bring the Iraqi British musician and composer, who is leading a fascinating band called Attab Haddad Quintet, and we worked together a couple of times in too many events and festivals. Haddad holds a degree in business management and a diploma in sound engineering, as well as master's degree with distinction in music performance. Atab worked massively on too many productions, including commercials and programs for the BBC Arabic. So I want to take much longer in getting into the conversation today. So Attab Haddad, a very warm welcome, and the stage is yours.
Thank you very much. Great to be here. Thanks for asking me over, Aser. Always a pleasure to see you.
It is my pleasure, Attab. I know we are live, and some of these circumstances are really difficult with the echo. I'm not sure why. However, my colleague Aaron will be advising on how we can solve this problem very short. I switch off all of my icons on my computer. Is this the case with you, Attab?
So,
Did you
so
switch off the other platforms?
yeah, I've only got this on. Yeah, I mean, we're all
That's great.
learning about it as we go along, aren't we? Because it's
Yeah,
all new.
this platform is called Stage 10, and this is our second experiment with this platform. However, I think it's working, and I'm sure my colleague Baron will do his best to produce this to a standard. So, Attab, I'm gonna start with the devastating news that came from Beirut this week, and in a private conversation today, you said that you've got a flat in Beirut.
That's right. Yeah, yeah. Very close to where the tragedy happened. So we heard that the flat took some pretty severe damage, but luckily nobody was in it. But it's still a shock and it's extremely disappointing.
Sure.
And
So
everybody's
luckily there was no members or friends of the family or anyone nearby. Or
nobody was there. I mean, that doesn't make it less shocking what's happened, really. But at least some relief that no family members got hurt or anything.
yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Great to know that no one has been harmed from the family, and I know that lots of people lost their life as a result of this explosion, and we send all of our sympathy and solidarity with them, definitely. Attab, I'm gonna move on to you founded the Attab Haddad Quintet few years ago in London. How does this came about?
Well, I mean, this is going back many years now. 13 years ago, I think I founded the band, and it came about after I hadn't been playing the oud for that long, but I'd composed enough music to compile an album. So I decided that I wanted to put something together as a vehicle for the music that I've written. So I looked around and I picked people from various projects that I'd been involved in the past, from flamenco things to friends of friends who, I knew what instrumentation I wanted. And I just asked around, met the bass player through mutual friends. The flautist was somebody I worked with previously, as was the percussionist. And I mean, the lineup has changed over the years, but the instrumentation has pretty much been the same. And 13 years on now, it's still oud, flute, double bass, cello, and percussion.
And your musicians who are members of the quintet are from multi different backgrounds, and
Oh yeah,
some of them changed over the years.
yeah,
Do
yeah,
you
definitely.
find this an easy task to keep changing all the time with these musicians?
Uh, well, it's happened. I think twice over the last 13 years. We changed the cellist for a period, and then the original cellist came back, and the percussionist changed after a few years, and it's still the same guy who joined in 2013, I believe it was. It's, I mean, it's not easy in terms of when somebody new comes into a project that's quite established and the people that have been playing in it have known each other for a long time. It might be a bit daunting for the new person to come into it because there's a lot of repertoire and everybody knows it by heart. So it might seem like a lot of work to begin with, but the music's not very difficult or complicated, and I think most of the people who've played in the band enjoy what we do, and so it ends up being less of a task. Uh, I think from previous experience, everybody who I approached to be involved was uh, quite happy to
Flexible.
be in the project. Yeah, quite excited to take part. So I've been really lucky in that sense.
That's
And of
amazing.
course, you know, your musical influences and your what you're interested in changes over time as well. So different things are creeping into my music, and as a result, I look for different musicians to play with to complement that as well. So, for example, now the latest addition to the band is a bass player from Greece who lives in Turkey, and he brings all of that tradition with. I mean, he's from a jazz background, but he also brings all of that tradition with him from the Eastern Mediterranean. He's familiar
That's
with the
amazing.
core Arabic music and stuff, so it kind of gels together that way.
Attab, the oud is very joyful instrument. It's an ancient instrument. It's rooted in the Middle East for a very long time, civilization after civilization, and seems to me like the oud is perhaps a major part of the Arabic community today. How is it easy or difficult for you to adapt all of these instruments in the quintet with the oud?
Um, I don't think it's difficult. I think you have to be careful as the person composing the music, not to write to the musician's strengths and to to play according to what their instruments are capable of. So, I mean, for example, Arabic music has notes that you can't play on some Western instruments. So you have to keep that in mind when you're writing for these instruments. As a result of this, I think the previous album didn't really we didn't really explore very much of the more Eastern sounding maqams, you know, with the quarter tones like Rast or Bayati, because a lot of the musicians on the record didn't couldn't play that sort of music. Um, so I'm hoping to introduce more of this in the next project. But yeah, in answer to the question, these are the sort of things you have to keep in mind when as someone coming from an Eastern tradition writing for Western instruments, you have to be aware of these things.
That's great. And Attab, would you consider flamenco is your major interest at the moment? Because it seems to me like this is where you've been heading for a very long time.
I was for many, many years, yes, completely obsessed with flamenco. I first came across it properly only a couple of years after I started playing the oud, and I was completely blown away and obsessed with it. And I really needed to understand how the music works. And the more I listened, the more I saw that there were similarities with what I was studying in Arabic music, and the more I fell in love with that tradition. I mean, it takes elements from Western music, it takes elements from Eastern music, and it's put them together in a really effective way. So for me, it was partly an obsession. It was partly a challenge to understand how this music works, and also a challenge to try to fit the oud into it in a way that sounded natural and organic. Um, so again, I had to be very mindful of what my instrument was capable of doing in a flamenco setting, and just went from there. Yeah, and
Is there a nostalgia Attab, between Seville and Baghdad as we worked together before with these titles and exploring the connections between all of these Mediterranean sounds all the way to the Middle
yeah,
East? Do you think music unites
does music unite people? Yeah, I
or
guess to an
divides
extent. Well, it definitely doesn't divide people, but it does bring people together to a certain extent. I think I mean, definitely, if you're not from a country or not from a tradition that you're interested in, then obviously that opens up that world to you. You know, I mean, if you're interested in flamenco, suddenly you'll find that you know a lot about Spanish food. You know about different parts of Spain. You get into other things via the music, and get more familiar with the new culture. So in that sense, yeah, I think it does bring people together. Yeah.
great. Through my experience as someone who worked very closely with you, Attab, I found that your fans and audience are very, very diverse. And for us, working luckily in this city, perhaps this is an advantage of what a musician from the Middle East or the Middle Eastern background is today. So, do you think the London and the British audience are keen to hear some more of these projects and more of this music?
Yeah, I think there is a section of the UK audience that is very interested in this sort of thing. But if I'm to be perfectly honest, I don't think it's the place with most interest in Europe. I think for that there's more happening, and more interest from the audience's perspective as well in places like France and Germany, where possibly they have a larger Arabic population, and that might be one of the reasons. Um, but generally speaking, the UK is not considered one of the stops on the oud calendar, if you like, you know. But there is
Mind you,
definitely. Sorry.
mind you, the city Attab has lots of good players from
Hmm.
different nationalities and backgrounds and cultures.
Yeah.
And I do fully understand what you are trying to say by shifting some of these concentration of audience in some parts of the European countries, such as Belgium and France and so on. But I have the feeling that maybe I'm wrong, you correct me if I'm wrong, that the British audience has changed in the last 20 plus years. And they are
Hmm.
more adventurous to perhaps to come and listen to some of your projects. And the evidence is all the gigs I did with you, they were sold out.
That's true. Yeah, yeah, that's true. I
So
mean,
maybe
it's definitely a big change from when I started playing. Say, it was 2002, 2003. I started playing professionally at 2006, so it's been 14 years, and in those 14 years, there has been a big change, both in terms of a growing audience and in terms of a more informed audience as well. So, I mean, when I first started playing, I'd play a concert and people would come up to me afterwards and ask me what the instrument was and where it's from, and they had no idea. That doesn't happen as much anymore.
that's
People
great.
generally, yeah, they know what the oud is, they know where it's from, they have some sort of frame of reference for the instrument now, which is definitely a good thing. Yeah.
Attab, you were in the city of London, in the heart of the financial district.
Yeah.
You you change 180 degrees your career from a financier to
Yeah.
a musician. How this all came about? I'm
Well,
sure the audience will be fascinating to find out.
it's not. I mean, I didn't really play an instrument beforehand. I was always interested in music. I used to make dance music in the '90s. And I was really into that scene of house and techno and all of that. But I never looked at doing it professionally. And then I went into university and I did a degree in management. And I came out. I went into banking. I worked for a Swiss bank in the city, and I just I didn't like it, and I was young enough and free enough at the time. I mean, this is going back almost 20 years now, so it's quite a while back. I had no responsibilities. I didn't have any dependents or anything. So I thought this is the time. If I'm going to make a big jump like that, I can only do it now. Otherwise, it's not going to happen. So I left banking without any clear idea of what I was going to do. And to begin with, I wanted to open a restaurant. Against it. And then I thought about it, and I thought I want to work in music because I love music. I know I'm good at putting together tracks, and I know recording equipment and that sort of thing. But it's too late for me as a musician, so I started studying sound engineering in the hope of becoming a producer at the end of the degree. And during that time, my brother Mishal went to visit my dad, who lives in the Emirates, and he brought oud back with him.
An
And he
Iraqi
started.
wood, sorry, an Iraqi wood,
Oh, it was a very, very bad Syrian oud, like a tool. Really, it wasn't like a real instrument. But I remember it was Syrian, and my brother brought it back, and he started taking lessons, and I just fell in love with the sound of it, and just started sort of doodling by myself, and I got more and more obsessed, and then I started taking lessons. And as I was doing the sound engineering degree, I decided at some point that I really want to do this professionally. I think I have an aptitude, but I need to train for it. So I went off and studied in Egypt for a while with Nasser Shamma at the Beit al-Oud al-Arabi, the Arab Oud House. And then came back and did a master's at SOAS in music performance, partly as a way into the music world, and it was very useful in that way because it was my first real interaction with professional musicians, and I got to meet a lot of people and made a lot of contacts, and it was kind of my starting point was that. Yeah. And
looking back at what you just said, Attab, this is a sign of determination,
well,
of you as someone who
probably
really wanted
more
something and
obsession.
you managed to achieve.
Yeah, no, it's more obsession. I think most musicians have quite an obsessive personality. So, I mean, if I get interested in something, I'll get obsessed with it, and I'll have to understand how it works. I'll have to know how to do it to some degree. And yeah, that's kind of how I've always been.
Great.
It's
So if this evening you fancy just a quiet moment on this beautiful sunny day, and you want to play something that you really like and inspired by, whose music that would be?
Oh, wow, that's a difficult question. it's,
Right.
there's many people, and it depends what period. It depends how I'm feeling in the moment. But I mean, there's always been people who've inspired me really a lot. Well, one of the biggest inspirations recently, over the last sort of 4 or 5 years, has been Yurdal Tokcan, an oud player in Turkey. Well, an oud master, not a player in Turkey, who I've been studying with for the last 4 or 5 years. He's been an inspiration. His music, his technique is something I definitely aspire to. Um, and then, I mean, it depends on the genre. I have obviously flamenco is a big one, and I have favorites every now and then. So, I mean, there's always the greats like Paco de Lucia, but from the new crop, there are people that I've come across that I've really thought, my God, these are incredible. Um, Yeray Cortez is a guitarist who's up and coming, who is just mind-blowingly good. Antonio Rey is another one in flamenco that is a big inspiration. Within the jazz world, I love the music of Avishai Cohen. I love the music of Shai Maestro. A lot of the modern jazz that brings in elements of Middle Eastern and Indian music, I really like, with the odd time rhythm.
That's,
Yeah.
that's great.
Uh, well, there's a lot of people I look to and who inspire me. Yeah.
Great. My producer colleague Aaron would share a picture now of some of these shows on the screens of Attabs in various events and spaces around the world while we are continuing with this conversation. So, Attab, I mean, you've been performing since a very long time in London. And, oh, I can see now Attab as a very smart young boy with his tie and suit. How old were you
Oh God, probably 4 or 5.
there?
Yeah.
And next to you is your brother, right?
That's my middle brother, Mishal, who looks very different now, I can assure you. But
Yeah.
yeah, he's about
Was
2 years
this
old.
picture taken in London?
No, this was in the Emirates. You see, I spent quite a big part of my childhood in Abu Dhabi, and
Oh,
this
I
was
see.
Abu Dhabi. Yeah, yeah.
So you've been based in the Emirates for a time.
Yeah, I mean, we came back here when I was about 15 or 16 years old, and my father still lives there, and he still works there, and I visit him quite regularly. The last time we were there was in December, and
Sure.
it's always I really enjoy going there. It's nice
That's
to
great.
you know.
And in London, you've been performing indoors, outdoors, in small clubs, in big venues, all over. I mean, there is no limit to your production. Is that correct?
Yeah, well, I mean, as with most musicians, I'll I'll play wherever they book me if it's a decent gig, and so I'm always up for doing stuff if it's worthwhile musically, be it a small venue or a big venue or wherever it might be. As long as I enjoy
Yeah.
playing with the musicians involved, I don't really mind.
So you are very flexible. You can adapt to the space as accordingly. And I've noticed saw in some of your portfolio, you've been traveling overseas for some concerts. So maybe my colleague Aaron will share one of the pictures in Toronto, I think it was. Um,
Oh, yeah.
if you can tell us a bit more about this visit to the other Han University.
Yeah, that was really great fun. It was a project that was mainly a friend of mine called Sama. He's a visual artist who put together a project and a computer program that interacts with the live musicians on stage. So it sort of makes makes a picture, or like a graphic art picture, based on the music that we perform on stage. So the Aga Khan Museum was quite interested in the project, and they invited us over, and it was myself,
Yeah.
Philippe Barnes, amazing flautist who is also the flautist in my band, and a very old friend of ours, Lee Westwood, composer and guitarist who's based in Brighton. So it was the four of us. We went out to Toronto for a few days, and it was a lot of fun. And it was an interesting
Okay.
project.
And also noticed you went to Saudi as well, to the King Abdulaziz University.
That's correct. Yes. Well, the last time we were invited was 2018, I believe. I've been there twice. Both times to the that's at the
It's
university.
this picture here, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it was a fascinating experience for all of us. We really enjoyed it, and they we were out there. We did a concert and we did some workshops at the university.
It was indoors.
Yes, yeah, they have. I mean, the facilities were incredible, and they have like a concert hall that's sort of world class in the
Sure.
university. And
And what was the perception of people like in Saudi?
what was the what? Sorry.
Perception of people. What is the,
Oh yeah, I mean the concert went
are they
very well.
engaged?
I think they liked us because we were invited back twice, so it must have gone well the first time because they asked us back another time, and the audience was great. I mean, it was really fun. The first time was very interesting, which was about 4 years ago, because a lot of the people in the audience at the time had never been to a music concert. They'd never seen live music before, which was a really interesting experience because we were warned beforehand that a lot of these people won't know about concert etiquette. They might be on the phone, they might be chatting to each other, and so they just said be prepared for a bit more noise than usual. But it was really great. We it went down really well, and everybody really enjoyed it. So we were quite happy to go back the second time. Yeah.
And I can see you with this image here, this photo here. You were at the National Theatre in London last summer as part of the Shabak.
Yes,
Was that with the full quintet, right?
that's the quintet. That's the older lineup, but before the new bass player joined. And that's Philippe Barnes on the left on the flute, Naomi Wright on cello, me in the middle, obviously. Antonio Romero on percussion, who I've been collaborating with very closely over the past
He's
few
a
years.
great drummer.
He's incredible. I mean, he's of Spanish origin. He's from Jerez, and he knows the flamenco thing is in his blood. I mean, he's not a flamenco percussionist by any means. More of a Middle Eastern percussionist, and his Middle Eastern playing is absolutely incredible. So I do stuff with him within the quintet, and we've done a lot of stuff as a duo and as a trio with guitarist Ramon Ruiz, who I've been working with for many, many years as well. And then, the bass player at the end was Matt Ridley.
Attab, to get a flamenco dancer dancing for your music. This is also a major achievement for the oud composition for the flamenco dance. Can you tell me a little bit more about this practice, please?
Um, yeah, I mean, we thought it might be a good idea to introduce the dancer into the shows. Probably, I think it was one of your productions, but it was one of the first ones we did a show with a dancer.
Yeah,
So, I mean, I discussed it with Ramon, the guitarist I play with, and he suggested we contact Anita, another friend of ours who he works with a lot. Said she'd be up for doing it. So we sat down, we had to think about what would work best, and we tried a few things out, and we decided, yes, this is going to be probably quite an interesting thing for the audience to do. So we did it, and it went down really well. So we repeated that show quite a few times over the last few years. The last one being in Sheffield, I think, around November last year. Yeah, it
that's
was it's
great.
a, it was an interesting thing to do with the. I mean, you still have to rely on the guitar for the main body of work with the dancer, but it was still an interesting thing to do and try to incorporate the oud into that as well. Yeah.
Surely the audience at Tab tonight are curious about the next project. Do we have any news
Well,
on
yeah,
that front?
of course. I think every musician has future projects. Everyone plans something. Unfortunately, the events don't always, go in our favor. So, I mean, in my case, I was really looking forward to recording the new album at the end of this year. But with the whole COVID situation and the lockdown, everything got really delayed. And the plan was to go to Turkey to record it. Um, but obviously, that's been pushed back a bit. Probably at some point next year. The idea is to go to Turkey to record the next album. Um,
Excellent.
I mean, I was about to start touring with this medieval music group called Lux Musicae, but then, as with everybody in this business, all the gigs and the tour were cancelled. So the next thing in the diary is with them in November, and hopefully that'll go ahead.
In November.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think it's in Belgium. I'm not sure. I have to check. But it's an
Belgium
early.
is a great country for production.
Yeah, a lot of stuff seems to be happening there. I just did a webinar for this institute called the Basola Institute. They commissioned us to write a piece, and then we recorded it. Various musicians. There's 4 or 5 of us, and they had us over for a seminar yesterday where we all played live online. And yeah, I mean, it seems to be a place where a lot of things happen. Belgium.
Yeah, absolutely. I heard recently that Belgium has probably more studios, I mean music production studios, than anywhere else in Europe.
Oh,
So
is that
it's an
right?
interesting thing to know about.
Yeah.
Attab, I want also to bring the subject of Iraq here. I know that the family is from Iraq, and I was wondering, do you think at some point you might bring some of these ancient sounds from Iraq to your project, your music? I know we've discussed this before.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, of
Is
course.
it still on the table as a project of your time?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I go through a lot of the Iraqi tradition, trying to find things that might be interesting to do in a new way. And there's always the odd piece that I come across that I think is something that would be interesting to do. Um, So yeah, I mean, as you know, I did a few of those with Ramon on guitar, as oud and guitar duets. We might be exploring a bit more of that, both in terms of Iraqi melodies that we'll do in a sort of in a more flamenco way, and more Spanish folk melodies as well, where we bring the oud in. So it's kind of, I mean, this has been a project that's been going on for a very long time, but we never really did much with it. We recorded an album that we never released, and the material's really good. And I think at some point we're going to revisit it and put it all on another album.
That is me being biased, but I am desperate to find out more about this project.
Well, hopefully something will come of it. I mean, we always talked about redoing it because it all came about by accident. Ramon met this sound engineer, or a student actually of sound engineering, who said, "Look, I really like your music, and I can offer you some studio time for free if you let me do the engineering." But I'm still a student and I'm learning. So we thought this is great. We get a whole week in a studio for free, and we had no plans to record an album or anything. But nobody turns down a free week in a studio. So we got together a couple of weeks beforehand, every day, trying to work out stuff that we can put down on record. And we came up with this idea of taking sort of Spanish folk melodies from the south and melodies from the Arab world, and introducing each other's instruments into that. So we did a version of Zuruni Kulla Marra with flamenco guitar. And then we did an Iraqi folk song, Tari Galub Salik, I think. And we did a lot of Spanish stuff from Federico Garcia Lorca's work and others, and it's always sounded really good. I mean, the oud and the guitar together work really well as a duet, and they complement each other quite well. So it's something we might get round to doing eventually.
Yeah, Attab, I would like to ask you, if you don't mind, for a small piece of music that we have not heard. I know this is a surprise, but
Okay, sure.
would you be able to just give a flavor to our audience
Okay.
who are keen to find out more about your music?
Uh,
So much.
in light of talking about the whole Iraqi thing, I'm going to play something. This is one of the latest things I've written. I haven't named it yet, but it's very much in an Iraqi mold. It's a Georgina, which is a rhythm that they use primarily in Iraq and the Arab world. And yeah, I'll play you a bit of that.
That is beautiful. Thank you so much.
Thank you. That's
That's great.
a part of it. It's not the whole track, but yeah, I haven't named it yet. I'm glad you like it.
That's amazing. Atab, what would you say to these young, incredible talent that we've got today in London from musicians and artists during the lockdown? You must experience also something really reflecting this situation, and I'm sure there is an advice from your side to these fantastic artists in the Arab community today.
Hmm. I'm sorry, the sound was a bit fuzzy there. I
Yeah,
couldn't
Atab,
quite.
I was asking you for an advice for these new talented Arab musicians and artists in the lockdown. What they should do?
Well, in the lockdown, I don't know. Practice a lot, practice and practice some more, and I don't know. I think we have to try to keep visible, seeing as we don't have any avenue to play to people live at this point in time. We have to keep in touch, with the audience in some way. So I mean, I've seen a lot of people posting. Videos of themselves playing, or just something to keep you in people's minds. Like we're
Sure.
still here, we're still playing. Yeah.
It must be difficult also for artists today to get the resources and the funding for their projects. During the lockdown, of course, it was a worse scenario than average, and I guess people will always be keen to find out from the expertise like yourself, how do you manage and how do you survive? What are the kind of sources that we can find? And would you be able to be one of the mentors for some of these musicians out there?
So I mean, how in what's I mean, I can tell you. Uh, it's the worst period, really. I think in modern history to be involved in music. We're going through a period of massive change, and I don't think anybody is quite sure where it's going to end up. I mean, things were pretty bad pre the coronavirus, with funding and in terms of just well-paid gigs. And I mean, a lot of people struggled a lot before the lockdown, and then the lockdown came, and because of the way that the help was structured from the government, a lot of musicians that I know didn't quite qualify for any of the programs that were offered.
You mean
So
for the public funding?
yeah, yeah, I mean, like for example, the furlough scheme wouldn't have applied to a lot of the musicians that I've come across who've complained about this. Um, a lot of us are set up as limited companies, and you work as a limited company from home most of the time. You won't have a physical
As
premises.
you mean self finance?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, when you get paid, the checks come in the company's name, but there's no physical company anywhere. And in
Sure.
that scenario, you don't qualify for any help from the government, apparently. So these guys ended up on universal credit at £90 a week, and all their work's been cancelled. And I mean,
At
it's a
that
nightmare.
time.
Yeah, they are very tough times. So people are trying everything they can, to make to make some sort of living from this, because at the moment it's very, very difficult.
Yeah. I always find your energy is great, and you've been keen to help everyone. I know in the back scene you always try to help, and that's why I was thinking you perhaps we can discuss this privately. Become one of these advisors to the young artists here in London. My head is all over the place, but once we try and find the time to promote ourselves after the
Sure.
lockdown, I think it's a brilliant idea for you to be on board with this initiative.
I would look forward to it. Um,
Great.
I was, I enjoy working with you, Asa, and it's always a pleasure.
Attab, the other part and the other half of you is also a very talented woman. Tell us more about Beauty, please, and what she do.
Well, my wife, we met through music. She came to me for oud lessons. She's professionally a conservator at the British Museum, but she plays percussion to a pretty good standard. So she was involved in a band that did a lot of Greek and Turkish music. She's Turkish; her origin is Turkish, and yeah, they did really well. The band was called Pakao, and they were gigging all over London. They had a really nice repertoire going, and so yeah, she's a very talented conservator, and she has
That's,
a very
that's amazing.
music.
So there is two artists in the household.
Yeah, two artists. Yeah, yeah,
Excellent.
yeah.
Attab, it has been a pleasure having you on board today with this very improvised conversation. It was honest, straightforward, and I am really happy to have you on board again. And thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for
Surely
having.
the audience would like to find out about Attab, but before we do that, I just wanted to share on the screen these organizations and charities that they are working on the ground in Beirut. Because some people have asked me this afternoon about some credible and respected organizations who work in the field. So for those who can afford and donate, please, the list of these organizations in Beirut are on the screen. And we will share it on the page later as well for those who are interested and can donate for the catastrophe in Beirut. Before we go, also, I would like to bring Attab's website and his Facebook. Attab, can you please let people know how to follow you and which kind of platforms they can access and which icons in the on the social media, please?
Yeah, I mean, I have my own website, attabhaddad.com, which hasn't been updated for quite a while. But the best place to get most up to date details is probably Facebook and Instagram. Facebook.com/Attab Haddad and Attab Haddad Quintet. And Instagram is, I believe, Instagram.com/Attab Haddad.
That's great. Attab, thank you again for this sincere and honest conversation. And thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us on this afternoon. Our next event of Arts Canteen In Conversation will be on the 1st of September, and it will be with our friend from the 47th Soul producer and Palestinian Jordanian rapper El Far'i. So watch out for the next conversation with El Far'i. And I would like again to take this opportunity to thank Attab Dad for his presence, and have a good evening all. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you.
Thank,
Good night.
thank you. Bye bye.